The Seventh Doctor is facing off against Iris Wildthyme. Ace is enjoying some hot chocolate in a cafe, and Hex is taking part in a bit of modelling. It can only be Muse of Fire, the monthly adventure that came out 6 years ago today. And it was quite a special little one, a Christmas treat that wasn't quite about Christmas. Had a Christmassy vibe, nevertheless. There's something warm and cozy about this one. It's rather a slow-paced story at first by Paul Mars, with some intrigue in there, lots of art, and yeah, it's something rather neat, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it utilizes the setting of Paris and the creative um, potential what's in that
Mm.
city at the time.
Creative
And
juices, you can almost say,
yes,
in
yeah,
more ways than one.
and using that to the story's advantage in this, like good art, it takes time to create a masterpiece, and this very much feels like a masterpiece.
Hmm.
After Paul Mars's previous monthly range story, which is the Peterloo Massacre, which is very much straight dark history.
This
We're
is
very
much more his usual style.
Yes, this is very much to the nice sort of fluffy, very wacky ideas, and I think this does have wacky ideas within it, especially when we get to the character of Dora Muse
Hmm. So you
within it.
mention it using art very much to its advantage. I
Hmm.
think it's fair to say we're using it to our advantage as well in this throwback, as we look forward to Puccini and the Doctor, the first episode in the upcoming Deadly Stranger set, about a you know artistic type from the early 20th century. It's a tenuous link, but
It works. It
we
works.
we make the most of it. Yeah, and you did hear that right. It is the first of three throwbacks that we are doing for this upcoming Deadly Strangers set because we don't know when to stop with these throwbacks.
That's
We
true.
work ourselves into the ground and then we work ourselves even harder because,
But when you've got a story like this, it's an absolute joy.
yeah, it's not
Um,
work, more a pleasure to
and this
sit down and listen to this one.
this is a nice little pleasure because the year before we had the double bill of Shadow Planet and World Apart, where we got a bit
Reuniting.
reuniting Ace and Hex. This is sort of playing kind of with their early dynamic, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it is quite a character-driven one, this,
Hmm.
with this trio who are, just trying to enjoy a bit more downtime. The Seventh Doctor doesn't have a grand plan in this one, which I like. I prefer that kind of story for him. And, it's funny how Ace isn't necessarily trusting of the fact that he doesn't have a grand plan. She's sort of
Yes, she's
always on the
waiting for that
lookout.
moment.
Yeah, she's on the lookout for an ulterior motive, but one doesn't end up coming along necessarily. Yeah, and so the characters get to spend a lot of time apart.
Mhm.
Like they're all going off doing their own thing, exploring Paris. It's very much like a little, you know, friendship group holiday. They're all
Yeah,
coming there together. They're convening at the cafe from time to time,
they're doing their
but
own thing.
yeah, they're also off exploring their own interests and uh, finding their own mysteries as well. And I like how sometimes they cross paths and investigate these things like the bookshop. But then, randomly, Hex and the Doctor, after investigating something, Hex will be like, "Oh, I've got an appointment. I've got to go." And then he'll quickly rush off to Iris's salon. And that's very much the more, relaxed approach this story has without it feeling like, it's playing against the characters or doing something surreal. It all works very well within the context of the story.
Well, it's quite surreal because you've got Saville the Dali there as well, haven't you? A surrealist painting.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. And Dora Muse herself being a walking surreal painting, a
yeah,
living
Picasso.
Picasso. Yeah.
Which I think is so Paul Mars, that he's using the backdrop of Paris and putting humor within it. Like, you don't have to be an art critic like Panda to get these little jokes. It's just little quicks where you're like, that's really clever. That's funny.
Yeah, it's,
It's
as a
sharp.
Paul Mars script usually is, it is very sharp and witty, and there's a lot of good humor injected in there. Some long-running gags get paid off, and just a lot of the dialogue is sparkling throughout
Es-
this story.
Especially the stuff with Ace and Panda.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Panda's great, isn't he?
yeah, this was my first time experiencing Panda, and I love him. I love him.
Mm.
David Benson does a great job.
I love the contrast between the voice and the visual. Also, you don't
Yes.
quite get the visual, but you get the visual explained to you. I mean, there is one moment in this where the visual seems a bit too much explained, but that's
Hmm.
just one odd thing where it's like, it's audio description dialogue rather than just natural dialogue. But
Yes.
yeah, I think that's only one moment towards the end that stood out to me a bit.
Hmm.
Other than that, nothing else there. Not even worth making a fuss over, really. It's just something that suddenly popped into my mind. I was like, oh, that is one criticism I can have for this if I had to have one. Because other than that, it just feels like it's not quintessential Who because it's very different from normal Who. But it feels like,
It's laid back.
yeah, it feels quintessential in the same way that something that's not quite normal Doctor Who feels quintessential, if that makes sense. It's the quintessential, non-quintessential
You've
Doctor
got some
Who, I
nice little
suppose.
hallmarks of Doctor Who there.
Hmm.
Um,
You've got the way the theme works itself into the soundtrack from time to time.
I love
It's
that. Which
yeah.
is very McCoy because there's a few bits in season 24 where the theme becomes incidental music.
Hmm. Yeah, it's all just rather neat, really.
Iris Wildthyme versus the Seventh Doctor. That's really wonderful having Katie Manning and McCoy go off and spar against each other. Obviously, we had that in the Defectors in a very different capacity, but
Hmm.
it's great to have Iris in a main range story.
Yeah, I mean, her second one, I suppose, after the Wormery. I'm trying to think if
Yes,
there's any
true.
others where she makes an appearance. I mean, they play off against each other wonderfully here.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think Katie Manning is on top form throughout this one. You could tell she enjoys doing Iris. Uh, it's something very different from Joe. It
I feel
allows her
like
to use her
Iris is very
natural
her.
voice a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Joe is a much more idealized character, I suppose.
Hmm.
Whereas Iris is a bit more true to Katie Manning's real self in some ways.
Yeah, very colourful, and lovable personality. 'Cause you can't help but love
Yeah.
Iris.
Mm. Your old Auntie Iris. Yeah. I
Absolutely
think so.
lovely.
Huggable as well.
Yes.
Mm. I mean, they're both different sides of Katie Manning's id in a way, perhaps.
Yeah, that's
Look
very
at two
true.
of them.
It's
I
very
thought maybe
true.
we're overanalyzing that a bit, but yeah, Muse of Fire, big old thumbs up for me.
Yeah.
Really good time, especially around Christmas. It's
Hmm.
not set at Christmas. There's not anything particularly Christmassy about the plot or the
Well,
setting.
I feel
It just has a
like
vibe.
it kind of does because you can imagine like the book drop having this nice sort of warmish lighting to it.
Mm,
You know, wandering around sort of Paris. I think there's this sort of nice romanticism
mm,
of it being released in this time of year where you think, yeah, that fits it quite well. And just being in a cafe, huddled in the warm, having hot chocolate, that just screams winter. And I
yeah.
think there's some wonderful creative ideas like the map of Paris with the little light bulbs with the flame inside. I think, yeah, there's so many wonderful, colourful visual ideas that really set your imagination alight.
Mm.
Really, truly a magical story.
Yeah, I think the soundscape and the way everything's played very much allows you to imagine the story visually.
Mhm.
It's one of those ones that invites you to imagine it without holding your hand too much with those visuals.
Yes.
I think it is one that just lights a spark, and then your imagination is ablaze with possibilities around this one while
And you become
listening,
a
which is
creative
wonderful.
genius.
Exactly. You don't have to fall down the stairs to do it either.
That's true. That's true. And you don't have to cover your ears with a big, chunky volume book
No. Yeah.
to block
So
out the genius.
no. Very, very true. If you've listened to it, you'll know what we're on about. If you haven't, go listen to it and find out because it
It's
is well
great.
worth a listen. Yeah. I think that's all there really is to say about Muse
Yeah.
of Fire by Paul Mars. Go pick this one up, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.